Man, wish I could do that. I need a little water. Time has stolen my voice. I not only do poetry, but a kind of exhibition of mortality. Where are we? This is a Just So story. To put you in the right imaginative space for this, I should tell you two things about it, because we're going to the moon. Let me find the poem. The flag in the poem, this is a literal thing. When the astronauts went to the moon, because there's no atmosphere up there and they were going to plant a flag, there's no air, so the flag would just hang ingloriously limp. And so they took with them a flag which already had a furl in it and was flying in the wind, a kind of permanent wave, as it were. The other thing you should know is that NASA sent a little disc up there, and it had all kinds of things on it. I think they intended it for some alien who might be passing by and wanted to know who we were. So the Navajo got wind of this, and they said, we'd like to put a line on there in our own language. And so NASA agreed. Of course, they had no idea what the line said. And what it said, which will be the epigraph for this poem, is do not make treaties with these people. Dave Lee told me that. It is very quiet on the moon. A cat squirrels, but that is back on Earth, on streets of stone where sound echoes, trash cans tipped over, glass breaking, fear in a gray overcoat firing its guns. It is all metal on metal, a plumber's snake trying to shed its iron skin, clanking, sparks flying, a steel beak hatching out of an egg of glass, the cracking shell a shatter of ice in the ear. While on the moon, an airless peace, the craters aglow with distant sun, and nothing to disturb the quiet dust. In a grove deep in the past, when the ibex was still bidden by its image drawn with a stick in the sand, a lion came down to drink where the moon lay white and naked on the pond, trails of light around her, a corona of snakes. The lion was very thirsty, and it drank and drank until the pond was dry, and the moon the barest glimmer on the mud. And that is how darkness first escaped from the place where it had lain, on the bottom of the pond. Now the blood from the kill no longer returns to the gods, so nothing is lost, but spills in the road for the jackals to drink. In the silence of the moon, old glory forever flies in its fixed imitation of a flag in wind, a permanent wave that can't disappoint the eager cameras of the press by hanging limp in the airless atmosphere of conquered space. Far below, the busy cameras snap the photo op, a president drawing his brows together in the fixed imitation of a mind at work. Down all the streets nearby, the wind rips at the trash. You can hear the sound of shredders in the shuttered rooms. Dogs bark. The subway shakes the sidewalk grates. Everywhere the dark ascends, by stairs, by escalators, up through the manholes with their covers pushed away, even by day, though just a bit more slowly, the dark extends its sway. The rats are growing bolder now. You can hear the steady sound of gnawing where they have dragged the last bright crust of moon into their hole. Wow. I don't know what we do with all the stuff that's pouring in through the media. They gather every murder, every catastrophe, every terrible thing in the world and pour it into our eyes and ears daily. We contribute to it. How do we deal with that? This poem was written thinking about that. It's called In a Time of War, a time which seems to have become perpetual. I grew up during World War II. We called it the war. Think about that. In a time of war, flies caught in the sap of the living tree someday will be precious, dressed in amber. Just so, the past appears to the present, gem-like in its perfect preservation. The hardened gold of yesterday, a relic through which today's sun shines. But those who are caught in the sticky sap of actual time, insects in the odds against them, who struggle in the ooze, slowly sink into the mass, the numberless, anonymous dead, till the atrocious becomes the mundane, our senses numb from the sheer litany of repetition. Let us then just watch this one small, desperate fly, stuck first by the feet, and then in its struggle entangled entirely in the glob of sap, its wings heavy as a brass angel's, until it is all at once still. A dark speck in a bubble of sap, oozing from the felled tree in a forest marked for the mill. How many millennia will pass before a teardrop lavalier of amber, carrying its small cargo of loss, will adorn the vanity of another creature, the fly, a fossil of a species no longer present on the earth itself a speck in a cosmos where galaxies are carded like cotton on a comb and pulled out into a distance where some new fabric is being spun and shimmers in the firelight of countless burning suns. A couple more. This one, those of you who know me know how bored I got with myself how many years ago. And one of the great things about poetry is it gets you out of yourself. You have to learn how to get out of the way. And one of the best ways I have found is to take other eyes and look through them. So in this poem, the speaker of the poem is a wolf. And not just any old wolf, if there is such a thing. I think every wolf is a noble creature. But this is the wolf of legend, the Lupercalian wolf, who, perhaps you know this story, suckled the twins, Romulus and Remus. Romulus, who was to become the founder of Rome. And something about Rome's history was in his blood. His father was Mars, the god of war. And he makes a small appearance in the poem in his astral avatars, the red star. Learn mercy from the wolf. Being as I was, it was the noise that drew me first, even before the scent. The long water had brought something to my den, spilling its banks, leaving the hollow pod of reeds in the cool mud. Whatever it was, it cried inside, and an odor rose from it, man smell, but sweeter. 2 small hairless cubs were in it, pink as summer oleander, waving the little worm-like things they had instead of paws. Naked like that, they made my blood go slow, my dugs begin to drip. I tipped the pod, they slid into the ferns, I nuzzled the howling pair. They found my side, they suckled there and drank their fill. That night, the red star in the sky was bright, a vulture's eye that waits with a patience that I hardly understand. The twin cubs slept in their shining skin, warm at my side. I dreamed. The trees were falling one by one, the sound deafening, the dust that rose from one, a mist to hide the falling of the next. The mountains were cut in 2, great stones were rolled and piled like hills until the sky was shut where the trees had grown. Pillars of stone rose high. The birds circled, but their skulls struck the sky. Teeth chewed the earth. Our den fell in like a rotted log when weight is added to decay. Nothing to eat. The cubs howled. The flesh fell from our bones. We ran under a strange sky whose light was wrong. It rose from the city walls, bounced off a leaden heaven, flat as the sound of a stone striking mud. One of the brothers killed the other. Blood poured where the streams had run. Nowhere to drink, we slink from one rock to the next. Hunger drives us to the walls where, sharp as the eyes of men, death waits with its 1,000 iron thorns. But the warm sun woke me. I forgot. The twins were all I saw. For days we lay together by the den. The river ran beside us like a friend. They drank and laughed at the morning light that played in the shelter of the leaves. Forgive me, I was wolf and could not help the love that flowed from me to them, the thin, sweet river of milk. Even now, though the world has come to match the dream, I think I would give it again. I'm going to end with a poem. A little gloss on this. Have any of you seen a film called The Last Emperor? About the last emperor of China? Because the scene from there is mentioned in here where the eunuchs left the palace. Do you remember that scene, carrying those little jars? The other thing to mention is that I have heard that at the Vatican there is a room full of genitals which were broken off the Greek and Roman statues before the fig leaves were put on them and they were placed in the Vatican Museum. I don't know if it's true, but I'd like to think so. And I can tell you that all I knew about this poem when I started to write it, or it started to use me, was that the statues were restless. Be careful what you remember. Can you see them now, the statues? Can you see them stirring on their pedestals, trying out their stiff arms, stepping gingerly down, breaking the glass walls that encase them? At the Vatican, forcing the door of the locked room, tearing off the plaster of Paris fig leaves, rummaging about in the heaps of broken off genitals, so that when they leave God's palace of art, like the eunuchs of China's final dynasty, who left the palace for the last time, carrying in small jars the parts of themselves taken by empire, so too the statues would be whole now, heading home. They tear themselves from the fountains, leaving behind the public play of the waters, climb down from their candlelit niches, deserting their place in the great composition. They enter the long loneliness of roads, their exodus making a path from the cities, a gleaming white stream like refugees returning to their distant burned villages, their memories a desolation of marble. Day and night they travel, some leading the horses on which they've been mounted for years in piazzas, their postures heroic. All are on foot, even the gods unaccustomed to walking, and angels from tombstones, their wings hanging useless, scholars and poets, tall women in togas, a boxer with a broken nose, a hooded woman stumbling under her son's dead weight, an armless Venus, a headless Victory, led by Justice, the blindfold torn from her eyes. Their streams converging on the road to the mountains, they climb higher and higher, like salmon returning to the waters that spawned them. The statues, relentless, make their way to the quarries from which they were hewn, the open veins in the heart of the mountain. An avalanche heard from a distance, rumbling and thundering, or an earthquake, a war begun or a world ending. We could only guess what we had heard. Then word spread that the statues were missing. The fountains, the squares, the galleries stood empty. The gardens were vacant, the pedestals naked, the tombstones abstract. And it is true, where the quarries had been, you can travel there and see for yourself. The mountain is whole again, the great rift closed, and young trees grow thick again on the slopes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
We're
We're going to have a very short intermission. It would be a good time to meet the two wonderful young ladies that did their poems and to talk to our other poets and musicians. And don't forget the cargo posters are free to good homes, and the bookstore will be open to buy books from our poets. And we'll let you know when it's time to get back with the lights. We have two great poets coming up afterwards. Dave Lucas, poet laureate of Ohio, okay? And Frank Escamilla from California.